Hello there, my lovely lovelies, and welcome to haQ attaQ. Now, cache within computing is a component that stores data so that when it's being requested, it can be served faster. And that's precisely what cache is doing for us, only it's doing it for our sample libraries. It's basically a sample drag and drop app, but as an AUv3, meaning you can access all of your favorite sample folders that you set up yourself from within any AUv3 host. So, number one, it loads into an AUfx slot, and it works as a sample folder shortcut directory, and it does not actually store or duplicate samples. Now, cache can also be opened in a standalone mode, and that's what I did when I started setting up my own sample collection. And it's really easy. When you got the app open, you simply just press in the upper right corner on this icon to gain access to your files. You then navigate to where you have your samples, and if you want to link an entire folder, you just go into a folder and then you press up here where it says open, and that will link the folder, including all the subfolders within it. Now, a little bit of a heads up. Sometimes when you have linked a folder and you try to enter it, well, it might get stuck in a loading sequence. Well, it all depends on how much data is in there, because if there's a lot of samples and a lot of folders, it's going to take some time for cache to actually build all of those shortcuts. So what I've usually done whenever I have something getting stuck in a loading session is I just back out of it, and then I wait a little moment, and as soon as I enter it again, I can see the directory and everything that is in there. Now, initially when cache came out, it didn't have support for accessing audio share files. And so I struck up a conversation with Louis, the developer of cache, and he's now found a workaround for this. Now, this update isn't out as I'm recording this video, but it will be at some point, maybe even after I've published my video. So to add folders from audio share to cache, we open audio share, we go to the folder we want access to in cache, long press on it, select export share in the pop-up menu, and then we select the cache app. And there you go, and you only need to do this once. Now, it doesn't copy anything, no duplication, it just makes a shortcut for this folder. Now again, this update isn't out as I'm recording this. I'm just testing it out through a test flight invitation, and you can always on the App Store check the update version history for an app to see if anything I've been talking about in my videos have been fixed, changed, added, things like that. Oh, and if you're wondering how you delete a folder, you simply just swipe on it to the left and press delete. Now, cache will also let you preview the samples before you actually select them, which is super important. Lastly, cache allows for long pressing on a sample and dragging it and dropping it somewhere else. And this can be a DAW or an AUv3 host's audio timeline. Or if an AUv3 supports drag and drop, well, you can just drop it right into there. And sometimes this all just works, but some other times it doesn't just all work. A lot of apps on iOS do not allow you to point to where you have your sample folders. So you basically have to take the samples you want to use from the place where you usually store them, copy them into the app where you want to use the samples, and then start using the samples. And this is an unnecessary duplication you can remedy with an app like cache. And you don't have to move your samples around, you can just keep them wherever you already have them stored. Next, you are setting up your own sample folder collection, meaning you now have a portable structure that you can load in other AUv3 hosts. And this adds to making your workflow really fast because you're working with a familiar sample folder structure. Lastly, there are some really obvious benefits here. Being able to listen to your samples before you actually select them. And then just drag and drop them, which is such a nice feature to have. I just love it when it's easy like that. I just realized another benefit. Multi-windowed setups is something that you can do on iPad OS now, but that's not ideal because the windows are so small, especially for DAWs. It's really not ideal to work like this. And so here an app like haQ is truly a benefit. Some apps just do not support dragging and dropping, and no one has been keeping tabs or documentation on what apps actually support dragging and dropping on iOS. And so the only way to find out was to test myself. Alright, so out of all of the apps that I have currently installed on my iPad, and out of those, the ones that are actually some sort of sampler app, these are the ones that actually supports drag and drop. I was of course happy to see that the big sampler apps like Koala Sampler and Loopy Pro support dragging and dropping, because if you're into beatmaking, at least you want to be quick about everything and you want to be able to pre-listen to whatever samples you have, and dragging and dropping into apps like these make a lot of sense. But I must say that I was surprised to see that Elsa, a very old app, it was released all the way back here, well, it also supports dragging and dropping. I mean, this is an app that was made before dragging and dropping was even a thing on iOS. Now, moving on, here is a list of AUv3 apps that do not support dragging and dropping. And I was a little bit sad to see Battalion part of this, even surprised, because usually when you have an app that has been ported from a desktop or a laptop system, usually they will support these things. Then again, Apple does things a little bit differently, so that might be why we're not seeing it in Battalion. I was also saddened that Async Sampler didn't have drag and drop support. I'm not surprised that this old app, which has a name that I can't pronounce properly, doesn't have support for drag and drop because it's a very old app. And I was only able to test the old version of Quanta because there is a new version, and I don't know if that one actually supports drag and drop. You'll have to tell me in the comment section, but the original one doesn't support it. Now, one thing to really highlight here is that the thing that made the most sense to me, at least, when dragging and dropping between apps were when you're using apps like AUM and also Ape Matrix, because both of them allow AUv3s to open up in little windowed modes like this. So you can have multiple apps open at the same time and you can just drag and drop in between them. Now, it gets a little bit trickier if you want to do this in arranger type DAWs, because a lot of DAWs on iOS have graphical user interfaces that just doesn't allow for dragging and dropping between AUv3s. And then there are AUv3 hosts and DAWs that won't allow you to drag in between effect apps because you can only have one window open at a time, or it will instantly close down the window as soon as you start dragging on something. However, they might allow you to drag from haQ onto an audio track in the timeline. And on that topic of dragging onto audio tracks, since Sand is currently beta testing audio tracks, which is gonna come at some point in the future, well, I did a little test here trying to drag something from haQ right onto a slot, and that worked. So that's gonna be dope when that comes out. Finally, I want to mention some groove boxes. You see, you've got Groove Rider 2, for instance, which does allow loading of AUv3 effects now with the latest update, which is super dope. However, even if you have a sampler, you can't drag to any of the pads or anything. Now, if you check an app like BAM, well, it actually allows for floating windows, and you can drag between those. Now, Drambo supports dragging and dropping in between AUv3s, and so if you have this view, you can easily drag samples from haQ into something like Koala or even Flexi Sampler or something like that. However, it isn't really ideal for that type of workflow, but it is functional. And Drambo is also one of those AUv3 hosts that can be hosted. Now, I didn't test anything with Logic Pro for iPad, and the reason for that is because it already is kind of a modern type app and will allow you to build your own sample collections from within the DAW. Now, as you can see, it's not straightforward which apps will work and which apps won't, because some of them were made in a time before dragging and dropping was even a thing, so it wasn't really planned for. Lastly, I would say that maybe the scaling of the app needs a little bit of work, because sometimes when you drag it, it will automatically want to turn into an iPhone format kind of view. And then when you drag it the other way, it goes into the landscape iPad format kind of thing. And sometimes I just want to make this small window, but I can't because it's rescaling weirdly and I don't get to have the dimensions I want. And I understand that this is hard for the developer to fix. It's not easy. How do you make the best kind of interface for something that is constantly changing? Now, I feel like dragging and dropping on iOS is still in its infancy. It's still not really integrated, which is why we need apps like these. But as you've seen in this video, it's not always ideal, it doesn't always work, and sometimes it just works perfectly. Who would I recommend this to? Well, I would recommend it to people who are working specifically with AUM and 8 Matrix, using stuff like Koala Sampler and maybe Loopy Pro. It's really quick because you can have cache open as a little mini window over here and just grab your samples whenever you want them. Now, if you are also one of those people who just hate having to copy all of your samples into your DAW every time you want to drag and drop something into your timeline, then get cache instead. Hopefully, after watching this video, you should be able to make up your own mind whether cache is for you or not. I'll be using cache inside Cubasis for when I want to drag my samples into the timeline, and I'm gonna be using it inside AUM for obvious reasons. And if you want to grab it, then you can go do that from the link down in the pinned comment under this video. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.